Hi, welcome back to Friend Crush. I'm your host, Amber Akilla. This is my podcast where I talk about stuff and things, cute, chaotic, and critical thinking. You can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, SoundCloud, Spotify, at Amber Akilla. And the meme page for this podcast is at friend.crush. Subscribe to the newsletter, become a member, and get special voice memo episodes where I'm like a lot more chaotic than usual, even more off the cuff than usual. And you can check the website friendcrush.club for merch drops. I'm so excited to present this Girl Confessions episode to you. Anonymous Girl Confessions with quote unquote Sarah. Let me know what you thought of this episode. If you want more episodes with Sarah or if you want more Girl Confessions episodes in general. Thank you so much for tuning in. Here we go. Hi, welcome to Friend Crush. We have a very special guest today, Sarah, in quotation marks. Sarah is a dear internet friend of mine. We connected over shared experience / trauma through my Instagram / TikTok. I'm very excited to have Sarah on because we continue to communicate and send memes and laugh about the absurdity that is life and dating. Welcome, Sarah. Please introduce yourself to Friend Crush listeners.
Thank you so much for having me on, Amber. My name's Sarah. I'm in my mid to late 20s. I was born and raised in Sydney, and I work in the legal industry right now. I met you because I still remember this really well.
Mm-hmm.
You uploaded a TikTok, which I really resonated with, and I Instagram DM'd you about it. And then we realized we knew someone in common.
Mm-hmm.
That was 2 years ago,
Oh my God, true.
literally 2 years ago. And we've kind of,
Panini.
just insane. And we've just talked ever since and
Mm-hmm.
shared TikToks and memes. And now I'm a podcast guest.
Yay! And also your ethnic background. We are both women of color growing up in
Yes.
Australia. I think that's an important point we'll touch on later.
Yes, yes. So I was born here in Sydney, but my parents are South Asian.
Mm-hmm.
So I am brown, if you can imagine a brown woman. Think like Priyanka Chopra. I don't look like
Yes.
that, but
Oh my
I have
God, you
that
do.
kind of vibe.
Glam South Asian women. Yes,
Thank you. Thank
we
you.
stand. Okay, so let's start with we have already kind of brainstormed topics that we were going to discuss that Sarah's interested in talking about today. We talk so much smack, so we're trying to focus on certain topics for this episode, and we're going to start with just where you're at relationship wise, what are you looking for, what's your relationship status, how are you dating, if you're dating at all. Spill the tea, girl, we're here.
Okay, so I am single. I've been single for three and a half years now.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Single
and
meaning not in a committed relationship, but still dating.
yeah, properly single right now.
Mm-hmm.
In this moment, I'm not speaking to any men at all, which is good. I think that's a really good thing.
How long has it been this time?
uh, 4 days. But
We
right
love that.
now,
Yeah.
yeah. And the only reason I am completely not talking to anyone right now was because I was just ghosted 4 days ago. So that's why
Mm-hmm.
we'll get into that later.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so single for 3 years. I don't really know what I'm looking for right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just kind of going on dates,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't necessarily want a boyfriend. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
opposed to having one, but
Mm-hmm.
that's not the goal. So yeah, kind of I guess casually dating around,
Mm-hmm. She just wants
seeing
to
the
be
trash
hot and
out
have
there.
fun. Yeah.
Exactly.
And which man can facilitate this experience or can add to this experience? That is the golden question.
Exactly. I feel like my life is really like full and rich right now, to
Mm-hmm.
actually find someone who is going to make that better
Yeah.
is really rare. And I haven't found that in 3 years. So I'll keep looking until someone meets the criteria.
Yeah. What have your like recent dating experiences been like? Anything
Okay,
that like
so
stands out that you want to
yeah,
share?
so you know a little bit about this, but I'll
Mm-hmm.
explain it to the listeners.
Mm-hmm.
I'll actually start from the start of this year.
Mm-hmm.
I took like a 5.5 month dating break. So
Mm-hmm.
from January until mid-May this year,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't go on any dates. I wasn't talking to anyone. I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
meeting. It was just nothing, and it was like
Mm-hmm.
really great. It was just a
Mm-hmm.
complete break. I was like technically on the apps, but
Mm-hmm.
like not like sending any likes or anything. It was just kind of there.
Yeah.
And
And as
then
of the time of recording is like end of July, just for
yeah,
listeners. So it's like
yeah,
been 2 months since you restarted entering the
yeah,
dating pool. And
yeah.
then was there like a significant event that caused you to be like, okay, I'm fully taking a break? Or was it just like you just happened to be like, oh, I haven't been on any dates recently?
Yeah, so I was overseas in January,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously there I wasn't going on any dates, but then I come back in February, and I the month of February was just really busy for me. Like I was just going out a lot, I was seeing a lot of friends. So it kind of started off accidentally, me
Mm-hmm.
just not really having the time. And
Mm-hmm.
then I also realized, okay, I think this time is good for me to get back into my hobbies, to see my friends, to have a bit of a break, because last year I had kind of dated a few people and it didn't really turn out into anything. So having like properly healing myself, I thought was important. So it
Mm-hmm.
kind of started off accidental,
Mm-hmm.
went into
Mm-hmm.
but then in mid-May, I kind of went back on the apps
Mm-hmm.
and matched with someone who was like very good looking,
Mm-hmm.
seemed pretty cool,
Mm-hmm.
was very keen, like within the kind of first few messages, he like really wanted to take me out and like go to dinner. So I
Mm-hmm.
was like, okay, I think I'm ready to go back out there. You know, I have no expectations or anything. So yeah, that was kind of like the first half of this year up until
Mm-hmm.
meeting that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then how did it go with
And then we were kind of seeing each other for like a month. It was very casual, not exclusive.
mm-hmm.
Um, and it I really enjoyed spending time with him.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know if there was that like deep emotional connection there,
Mm-hmm.
but he was like, you know, really funny. We like bantered really well. And but I did know there were some red flags very early on. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I knew that he had just come out of a relationship. He was open about that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I could just tell that he wasn't looking for anything serious, which was fine because technically I wasn't, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
still not. But I
Mm-hmm.
think when you start to like someone,
Mm.
it's difficult to just turn off emotions and just be
Yeah.
like, okay, yeah, casual is fine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so we kind of saw each other for like a month, maybe month and a half, and
Mm-hmm.
then we both went overseas.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so we were talking kind of while we were overseas, but obviously weren't seeing each other.
Mm-hmm.
And then in that time, I felt distance from him,
Mm-hmm.
and had also learned a few things. And so I actually, um, I sent him a message a few weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
um, because I wasn't sure of kind of what was happening. I was confused, right?
Mm.
Because we were still texting, but I didn't know if he wanted to anymore. I didn't know if I wanted to. And so I just sent him a message just saying, you know, not really sure what's happening here, but like, wish you the best. You know, we don't have to see each other.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'd rather, for me, I don't like having a pen pal
Mm.
unless they're cool like you. And unless you send memes to them, I don't want a pen pal, especially with a
Mm-hmm.
man. I'm sorry, they're not
Literally.
sending good memes. They are not sending good memes.
They're not sending you
So
any memes you haven't already seen 2 months ago.
exactly. Exactly right. They're
Yeah.
sending Insta reels from
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah.
No, not
Please.
okay. So basically yeah, I sent him that message and he
Hmm.
like calls me and is like, I'm still healing from my breakup and I'm
Really?
still trying. Yeah, the one you just got out of.
Did you know? Wait,
Um,
how long was it since they'd broken up?
I think like 2 or 3 months, but they were together for like 2 to 3 years. So yeah, it was like a
Uh-huh.
long term relationship,
And
right?
also
I
like
know
the circumstances of the breakup was like they were breaking up because she was moving away, not because like
exactly.
someone had cheated or because
Yeah,
one person hated the other or they fell out of love. It was like the
yeah,
feelings were probably still there, but
exactly,
they just
exactly.
like couldn't be together. And they were staying in touch. Like the fuck.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He was open with me on the phone call. He said, you
Mm,
know, I'm still trying to process their breakup and I'm still talking to her because she's going through some like family difficulties at the moment.
mm,
And I was like, okay, that's totally fine. We don't have to see each other,
mm-hmm.
And then he said, no, no, I still want to see you again. And so obviously me being me, um, I was like, okay, why not? And so we actually saw each other a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the vibe, I will say, was definitely different to before.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was just far more casual.
Oh.
Just, yeah, you can just tell when something's off with someone or
Mm,
different.
mm,
I felt that with him, and
mm-hmm.
I'll talk about like maybe my anxious attachment later, but I
Mm,
felt that with him.
mm-hmm.
And I just thought, okay, maybe he's really making clear to me that he just wants something casual. Okay, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And then we say bye, I leave, he does text me and like call me that night, and it seemed like we were going to see each other again. And then 2 weeks pass and neither of us have messaged each other,
Mm-hmm.
which is fine because I'm like, look, it's casual. I'm busy. I don't even want to see him this week. So it's
Mm-hmm.
fine.
Mm-hmm.
And then I then on Sunday, so it's Thursday today, so
Mm-hmm.
like 4 or 5 days ago, I actually messaged him
Mm,
and I just kind of wanted to see, what he was up to.
mm-hmm.
And so I was like, hey, how are you? How was your job interview the other week? Because I knew he was applying and yeah, no reply 4 days later.
Loser, him, that is. But you deserve better, and he sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. Like it's funny, I think what I've learned in these past like 3 years of dating is
Mm,
so much of what people do is about them and their life and their circumstances.
yeah.
And I think me 3 years ago would have taken this so much worse than I'm taking it now.
Mm-hmm.
Like on Monday when I checked my phone in the morning and he still hadn't replied, I will say like I felt bad
Mm,
and I kind of felt anxious in my stomach and I thought, okay, I didn't think he would ghost. I didn't know
mm-hmm.
if going to continue, but I thought he had more respect and kindness to just
Mm-hmm.
send me a reply.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's been days since then, and I just think, okay, that's on you. You're a
Mm,
32 or 33-year-old dude who can't even send a simple text.
mm-hmm.
Like, you're not really going to get that far in life if you can't be respectful to someone else.
Mm.
Um, so that's my most recent, like, longer term dating thing, which wasn't even that long. It was like 2 months.
I mean, that's a
Um,
decent amount of time in this economy, I'll tell you right now.
seriously, seriously. And that's literally in the last 3 years of dating. That's
Mm-hmm.
been one of the more longer experiences I've had
Mm-hmm.
because with Hinge, things I found are just very, very short term, as in
Mm-hmm.
one, maybe 2 dates.
Mm-hmm.
Anything longer than that, I'm like, yeah, we were basically married.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Me and my
that was a
ex-husband.
marathon. Yeah, exactly, exactly. Let's talk about exes. Let's talk about this 2 month man. So
Literally.
yeah,
Oh
yeah. So that's
God.
been my most like recent kind of longer term thing. But I have been on a couple of dates since then. So I went on
Mm-hmm.
a date Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Um, with a man who, the moment I heard his voice, I just said, no, it's not for me.
The
It's
body
really not.
was like, fuck this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Which sounds, I know it sounds kind of insane, but I think everyone has their things when it comes to dating, like
Hmm.
deal breakers that you
Yeah.
don't even understand. Like for some people, it's height, for some
Hmm.
people, it's teeth.
Hmm.
Other people, it might be like their dress style. For
Hmm.
me, it's voice.
Hmm.
And I've had this with guys where if
Hmm.
I don't like the sound of their voice, I can't, I, there will be nothing. There will be no
Yeah.
date. There will be no other date. And I'm already trying to figure out how to leave the date
Oh my God.
because, yeah.
So
So
like,
that was,
sorry, so like your hinge process is like matching and then chatting and then meeting up, not like matching, chatting, like video call, or some people do the video. I don't know.
yeah. I have friends who definitely want to call someone on the phone beforehand. I find that that's a bit it's too much for me. I would just rather match and exchange messages and see that they can at least keep up a text message conversation and they're adding to the conversation. They're asking me questions.
Mm,
We have something in common.
yeah.
And then I will just, go to drinks with them. I think drinks is like
Mm-hmm.
very low effort.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll usually always schedule it in days where I'm like already kind of, in the city or like nearby to them
Mm-hmm.
because there is no point in scheduling a date that you have to make a lot of effort for because what I found is a lot of the dates lead to nothing anyway. So do not too much time and
Mm-hmm.
effort in something that is kind of nothing anyway.
Yeah, because I feel like the thing with online dating is that it's such like a low barrier to entry, kind of, that it doesn't make sense to me to be putting in a lot of effort into going to like multiple dinner dates a week or like a month with rando guys, because even if the guy is paying, it's like you're getting dressed up, getting ready, you have to set aside time in your life to literally hang out with a stranger. That is still like valuable time. There's like I just think that if I was on dating apps, I would be doing the least.
No, literally, it's exactly that because when I was on this bad date on
Mm-hmm.
Friday, I realized I'm like, I could actually just be at home right now eating dumplings, watching a
Mm-hmm.
movie.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't I do that?
In
Because,
peace.
yeah, exactly. Because I'm not really learning anything from this man. I'm sorry,
Mm-hmm.
we don't have any interests in common.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this isn't like, we're not really like laughing or bantering. Like, this just
Mm.
kind of a waste of a night.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas sometimes I will say with other dates I've been on, I feel like I actually kind of learned something and met someone that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
That is rare. That is
Mm-hmm.
rare with a date.
Mm-hmm.
But occasionally it
It's
happens, right?
happened.
It happens. So those
Yeah.
are kind of good date stories.
Yeah.
Whereas last Friday, and I went on a date like the week before, with like something similar. The guy was nice.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the sound of his voice, so that was something. It was still a date where we just really didn't vibe that way at all.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I didn't feel like he was, very worldly or
Mm-hmm.
smart,
Mm-hmm.
where I felt like I was at least learning something new.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Whereas when I go out with my friends, I know I'm going to have a good night. Like it is a
Mm-hmm.
guaranteed. Or when I'm alone, I know I can make it a good night. I can
Mm-hmm.
listen to a new album. I can watch a new movie. I can read a
Mm-hmm.
book.
Mm-hmm.
On dates, you have to hope that the other person is interesting. And often, I'm sorry, they're not. They're just not
Yeah.
that interesting.
Yeah, because the thing with Sarah is that she knows how to carry a conversation. She knows how to contribute. She's very giving in the way that she communicates. So it's not like she's saying, man has to entertain me. It's like, I already know that you are doing more, like, not the most, but like you're already like doing your best to engage with this person. And if they have nothing, if they can't even meet you like halfway or like at your level, then they're boring. Like it's not you, it's them for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And like I'm always open to learning different things about people and
Mm-hmm.
learning about different cultures and
Mm-hmm.
getting into people's interests. But sometimes like the vibe is just not there.
Mm-hmm.
And I went on like a period last year of just dating foreigners,
Mm-hmm.
which is so random. But at least like with them, I learned a lot about like Norway and
Uh-huh.
Canada.
Yeah.
I just felt like it was kind of enriching my life in a different way. Whereas,
Yeah.
like with Australians, I'm like, it's just that I know enough about you.
Yeah.
I'm here in the same country.
Yeah. Oh my God. Wait, so when you were dating just foreigners, was that like foreigners that lived in Australia or like guys that were visiting?
They were like visiting, or they were in Sydney kind of longer term.
Mm-hmm.
So there was one guy who was an exchange student. He
Mm-hmm.
was in Sydney for living there for about like a year.
Mm-hmm.
He was really cool. He was a really, really like good looking dude, carried the conversation well.
Mm-hmm.
Think the problem with dating foreigners is that they don't really have the same goals that I might have. And
Mm.
I think they have different kind of social circles and have different things they want to be doing in Sydney, which are not dating.
Mm.
And it would be the same if I was overseas. Dating wouldn't be a priority.
Mm-hmm.
So this Norwegian guy, I actually messaged him
Mm.
and, I said I had a great night and I'd love to meet up again. And initially he said that he wanted to too. And then when we kind of arranged the date, he's like, oh, cough, cough, I'm sick, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so we never did. But like
Mm-hmm.
I understood it because he's only here for a year. You
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily want to date. So I
Yeah.
definitely didn't take it personally at all.
Mm-hmm. Love that for you, the growth.
Literally the growth. I can actually compare that to like the start of my dating journey, which
Mm-hmm.
was 3 years ago when I
Mm-hmm.
first got on Hinge.
Mm-hmm.
Mistake number one, maybe. Maybe I should have never done that.
Like all of the dates that you've had in the recent past, like through apps, like have you met anyone in person or like gone from like friends to lovers vibe, or it's all on apps?
So everyone has been off Hinge except for one guy who was a friend.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'll talk about this friend story
Mm-hmm.
because after this, I now don't think I would ever really date a friend again.
Mm-hmm.
So we met at uni quite a few years ago now, and we had always been like friends there. We would
Mm-hmm.
hang out in class and we would have like study breaks together. We always got along really well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but he wasn't single for like he was in a long-term relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were both single at the same time. And he, asked me out.
Mm-hmm.
And I was quite hesitant for a while. Like I thought we were like flirty, and I did have a crush on him before. So,
Mm-hmm.
but I was hesitant because we had
Mm-hmm.
been such good friends and I didn't know how that would actually turn out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then we went on the date, and I realized that I didn't feel that for him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I just, it was really, I hate the term friend zone, but really he
Mm-hmm.
was in the friend zone.
Uh-huh.
I just couldn't feel that way about him.
Mm-hmm.
And so I, he was very keen after the date to keep like seeing me and hanging out.
Mm-hmm.
And a regret I have looking back is I wasn't very open with him about how I
Mm-hmm.
felt.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how I felt about it, and I
Mm-hmm.
didn't communicate it very well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the first month after, I just, kept telling him I was busy
Mm-hmm.
and that I kind of wasn't in the headspace, which was kind of true.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't want to hurt his feelings. Like we had been friends for so long. This
Mm-hmm.
this wasn't a random Hinge guy where you can just send a text saying I'm not into it. Like this was someone I'd known for years who we have mutual friends, um,
Mm-hmm.
same industry as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really, yeah, I just wasn't super honest. And then finally, maybe 2 months later, 2 or 3 months later, he had asked me out again. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when I told him, um, we can hang out, but as friends. And I began to feel the distancing from him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then we kind of, it was this really long drawn out thing for another 5 months where he kept still trying to like flirt with me.
Oh.
And yeah, yeah. But like, it's, I feel bad about how I wasn't as firm as I should have been at the start.
Mm-hmm.
Then I had to tell him again that like I just
Mm.
want it to be platonic, and now we don't have a friendship.
Mm.
We just don't talk, which, I think is for the best, because we obviously, like, I think he needed that space and I need that space, because I think it's very hard to be friends with someone when you think that they want to date you and you don't
Mm-hmm.
know where their head's at.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, unfortunately, I feel like I lost a really good friend from that.
Mm.
And I've been very cautious since then to ever go on dates with guy friends.
Mm-hmm.
Hinge seems just like a little bit safer
Mm-hmm.
almost.
Do you have like many guy friends that you would potentially date or that you think like would be possible candidates, but you're just like not going to do that for now?
No, I actually don't think so. This is the other thing. Like, I think a lot of the most important people in my life, like all my closest friends, are women. And
Yeah.
I have a gay bestie as
Yeah.
well.
I was just
But
wondering like if you have like straight guy friends, like
yeah,
because
do I
I'm
have
like, I don't know if I
yeah.
have enough straight guy friends to even have a friends to lovers arc.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm thinking that now. I honestly, like, I have some guy friends, definitely, but they're just very like kind of casual friends.
Yeah, like I
Um,
know men, but I'm not like, oh, that's my bestie.
exactly, exactly. Or like I have a couple of good ones, but we may see each other once every 6 months or once a year,
Yeah,
and
okay.
may message occasionally. Like, it's not with like how I am with my girlfriends where we're
Mm-hmm.
texting every day.
Mm-hmm.
I will say though, there have been times in my past where I have been really um close with some guys and they've taken that the wrong way,
Yeah.
which is why I know how to maintain boundaries with men a bit
Mm.
better.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I was young, like this is in my early 20s when, you see them a lot more. I was at uni with them.
Yeah.
Um, and so then you go from like talking in class together to talking every day. And then suddenly they are wanting something more.
Mm-hmm.
And and this happened to me with someone else, where then
Mm-hmm.
I stepped back and I said, no, like this is just a friendship.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy friend said something like, well, this feels like a relationship, but without any of the benefits.
What a little
That's what he said to
bitch.
me. I know. But then I realized like men and women see friendship so differently. Like, I
Yes.
feel like I'm a very giving friend, and I
Mm-hmm.
will talk to someone if I want to talk to them. I'll send them memes.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be thoughtful, and I'll maybe get them gifts. But this friend interpreted that as me liking him
Yeah.
or me wanting a lot of emotional energy from him. But I'm like, no, that's just how I am as a person and as a friend. But
Yeah.
you've misinterpreted that. So
Yeah.
since those experiences, I've also had to learn to maintain boundaries better with certain men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Definitely like their bar for behavior in terms of like what is considered love or loving or even just kind is so low that most women wouldn't even be able to like fathom. Like recently, I was like telling my friend, I was like, yeah, I just try to say that I only want to date like rich guys or guys that I feel like can take care of me because that is indication to a man that he cannot just get away with the bare minimum because that is what they're trying to do most of the time, because I've had like straight guys around me that I've sort of like, I can tell that they're kind of like trying to decide if they're going to like push a little harder or
Yeah, yeah.
pursue. And then I've like in like some kind of group setting, like dropped this and like said this when people are talking about what their type is. And then they just like totally back off. And I'm like, yeah, like you're not going to be able to get away with doing the bare minimum and thinking that I'm going to give you like all the things that I would want to give to a partner if you're just going to give me peanuts. Like
Yeah, nothing. It's nothing. Like, what are
Yeah.
they bringing, right?
Yeah.
Whereas in female friendships, we give each other so much
Yes.
and we're so like emotionally there for each other
Yeah.
that when we are like that with a man, they get confused.
Yeah.
And so it's better to just keep that energy and save it for a partner,
Yeah.
like in terms of, male female dynamics.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so
Like,
that is my only friends to lovers thing that never even turned
mm,
into a lover.
mm,
It
yeah.
was friends to no friends.
Literally. Yeah, you go from like friends to friends with benefits, no friends, no benefits, and you didn't even get to
Yeah,
the benefits part. But
exactly.
what was I going to say? Like, oh yeah, I like briefly dated this guy, and he would talk about how he found it really difficult to like keep in touch with his friends, and he was like, oh, I need to like, make an effort to like go and see these friends because I just haven't seen or spoken to them in so long. And I would literally just always be like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean it's like hard to hang out with your friends or like to keep in touch with your friends that aren't his housemate, like aren't the guy that lives in the room next door? He's like, yeah, I just kind of realized like I don't hang out with anyone outside of like my housemates. I was like, what?
I just can't relate. Like I'm such an organizer within my friendship groups as well.
Yeah.
And so natural to be like, who wants to hang out? Who's free this day?
Mm-hmm.
And so when a man can't even do that with his friends, if a guy said that to me, that would indicate to me that he's lazy and he
Yes.
wouldn't put in that effort with you in a relationship. Or
Yeah.
he might in like the first, the free trial of the 3 weeks. Right?
Yeah.
And then he would go back into those habits of being lazy and
Yeah.
just he's used to that. That's what he's like. Whereas like if a guy said, he really prioritized those friendships, or like other like interpersonal relationships he has,
Mm,
then that might indicate otherwise that okay, he's willing and able to put in
mm,
work with people and he knows how important friendships and relationships are.
yeah. And mutual effort.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah. Because there's like nothing like for him, I was sort of like, okay, this isn't like that serious for me, but it was still like a learning experience. So he would say, like, oh, like we could do this. We could like go to a pottery class together. We could like go on a little trip. And I'd be like, yeah, cool. And I would just like wait and see like how many of those things actually eventuated, maybe like one out of like 10 suggestions. And then, I was just thinking, like, there are women who like being able to look after men in that way, or like being able to plan and like take the lead in that way that he is going to be more suited for long term when this is over.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. No,
But that's not me.
that is no, no, no. See, that's another thing that I hate when men like future fake. They
Yes,
say shit that will never eventuate. And I don't know whether they do this on purpose or whether it's just
exactly.
things that come out of their head. Like maybe they're actually thinking this, like, oh, I want to take you to pottery, or
Yeah,
yeah, let's get married and have kids,
yeah,
right? Or are they actually, is there any thought process? Because I personally would never promise anything to anyone unless there was actually,
a
I wanted
chance.
to,
Yeah,
exactly, like I had
yeah,
the intent.
yeah.
When I think about something, like then I am, the next day I'm Googling it, seeing how I can
Mm-hmm.
do it or,
Mm-hmm.
how I can make it happen. But men, I've been in that same thing where the things that men have told me on like a first or second date,
Mm-hmm.
you would think that right now I'd be like married with babies if any of those things happened, right?
Literally, yeah. Yeah, like
They
if I had
don't.
like there was like a period of my life in my early 20s where guys kept saying like, oh, like we should run away together or like, and I was like, if I had $1 for every time a guy told me that, I would be going on round the I would be like on a round the world trip. Like, are you for real? But I think I think most guys are not conscious of what they're saying. Like they just like the idea and then they like to say it and they like to feel good about suggesting something that you might seem interested in, but they're not necessarily like saying it with the intent to manipulate or with a conscious intent. Like I'm sure there are guys that are like narcissistic or like are playing a game, but I think most of them are just talking out of their ass and they don't even realize.
Yeah. Oh, I think they just say the first thing that comes to their head that
Yeah.
they know that will make the girl feel good. And
Yeah.
maybe there is a second where they do want to be doing these things and I think it'd
Yeah.
be fun. But the real like good men, intentional
Hmm.
men will actually make it happen.
Yeah.
Or put some thought into these things. Like I remember I went on a date with a guy. This was years ago. This is actually the first date, hinge date I ever went on.
Hmm.
And he was a very, very nice guy.
Hmm.
And he was telling me about like his favorite artists and how like a few of them were like coming in town. And he introduced me to Grimes, who I still listen to today.
Hmm.
And the next day, he at least like sent me links to like one of his favorite artists. And he's like, would you want to come see her with me?
Hmm.
And also, like, he was vegan. I remember this. And he was
Hmm.
like, can I pick you up and drive you to this restaurant that I want to try out? And I'm like, oh, wow, you are actually someone who is pretty thoughtful. And those things you said on the date, like you remembered them and you
Hmm.
actually and wanted to put that in place.
Hmm.
Like that's rare. And I can't believe that was my first hinge date. Like that actually set
Wow.
the way
Yeah.
too high.
But you went in the end?
No, so funnily enough, with that guy, I had just gotten out of a relationship. So I know I was the bad guy for this. But to be fair, at least with this guy, so me and my ex broke up
Mm.
and um a week or two later, I go on a date with this guy,
Hmm.
and he's so great. Like,
Hmm.
genuinely, I could just tell a good person. And we go on this date, we keep messaging, and he actually brings this up and says that he wants to pick me up. And I realize I'm like, whoa, I am not
Not
ready
ready.
to do it. And
Mm.
so at least I communicated that with him. I've
Hmm.
always been very big on communication. And I
Hmm.
just say, honestly, I did just come out of a relationship. Like, I can't date anyone. And
Hmm.
I actually didn't date at all for another like 3.5 months after that
Hmm.
because it taught me, okay, I need to properly be alone and I
Hmm.
can't lead someone on who is actually a genuinely a good person.
Mm. That's great. Yeah, I think like full circle in this moment, realizing or being able to demonstrate how it's not personal, like when someone withdraws or when someone isn't ready, like it's not his fault that he couldn't convince you to like go on this next date with him because like you were just not ready. And the same way that this guy that ghosted you, being a little bitch without his without his communication, like there's nothing that you could say or do differently that would make him ready, because he's just not. And like that's just like how it is sometimes. And I guess it must be the way that we are conditioned through like media or something, and the way that relationships are portrayed, that makes us feel like it's our fault or our responsibility, or like, you know our problem if someone isn't ready, or like someone doesn't want to do the things that they say they want to do. Like that's fully on them. But I totally agree with you. Like I would never promise to do something with someone, anyone, if I didn't have an intention of like following through. Like I feel so bad when I make dinner plans with someone and then I'm like not able to make it, or I need to reschedule. And then these guys like, and it's funny when the things that they promise are literally so basic, and it's like, is it that hard for you, or do you lack self-awareness to such a high degree that you like speak without thinking in this way?
I don't know if they just like forget or I really like I have
Yeah.
no word to describe it, right? But like
Yeah.
I'm someone who I generally have a pretty good memory,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes to men I date. And
Mm-hmm.
so when they promise me something or they say stuff like that, it is like in my mind. I'm
Mm.
thinking, will this
Yeah.
actually eventuate?
Yeah.
And if it does, then that's a green flag. If it doesn't, then I start to think, okay, I think this person might either be lazy or
Mm-hmm.
not, or maybe just not looking for anything serious, things like that. Yeah. But
Yeah.
your other point about how nothing is like personal in dating,
Mm.
I completely agree. And it's taken me years to realize that. Like,
Mm.
I think when I first went on Hinge, like a few years ago, these were like my first experiences with dating
Mm.
generally, because in my early 20s, like I just never really dated, and not in
Mm-hmm.
high school, definitely not either.
Mm-hmm.
So then when I first started dating and I would get rejected, I
Mm.
took it really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I would message my friends and ask them, oh my gosh, guys, like, what is wrong with me? Like,
Mm.
am I ugly? Like, is
Mm-hmm.
that it? Am I like not funny? Like, I
Mm-hmm.
thought I was funny. Is this not,
Mm-hmm. Do you guys think I'm funny? Like, what about this
Yeah.
meme? What do you think?
Yeah, exactly. Literally, that was me. And now, years later, I'm like, whoa, no, no. So, like, dating is such a kind of fickle and weird thing,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and none of this rejection you should like take personally because people are perceive things and people very differently anyway.
Mm.
And why do you want to go on another date with someone who doesn't want to go on another date with you? Like,
Exactly.
you want
Yeah.
someone to be obsessed with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it's totally fair to have that like bruising of your ego feeling when you're like, oh, why doesn't he want to text me back? Or like, why isn't he doing all these things? Like that's totally normal. And to like feel a type of way. But at the end of the day, to be able to be like, okay, you know what? Like I have my life, they have their life. And like you don't always know what you're going through in the moment. So the idea that there's a way for you to figure out what some other person is going through, even though they don't know what they're going through, is like, yeah, you're just playing a losing game in that
Yeah,
sense. So yeah,
yeah.
not taking
Exactly.
things personally is so important.
I think, yeah, I've realized with some guys that I've dated, like even this most recent one that ghosted me, even though I only knew him for like, 6 weeks, 2 months, and
Mm.
I've realized he doesn't even know that much about me and my life.
Mm.
Like I haven't like let him in, right?
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't know kind of any hardships I've been through or what I'm going through now. So I also see that in him. I'm like,
Mm.
I don't know what he's going through. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
think, the ghosting was rude, but I also
Mm-hmm.
am like, he could be dealing with stuff that I don't know about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so
That
I
he
think
doesn't even know about yet, clearly.
exactly men often they don't know what they're going through until they go do something insane.
Yeah, literally until they hit rock
And
bottom.
then
Like, yeah.
exactly. So I think yeah, just not taking things personally is like the biggest thing I've learned through Hinge.
Mm-hmm. So you haven't met anyone in person. Like you haven't had someone because I haven't used dating apps since like
Yeah.
2000, I would say like 2016 when I was on exchange in Beijing.
Yeah.
That's when I used dating apps. And like dating apps back then were like totally different to how they are now. Like I was on Tinder. I think the most advanced feature they had was the super like.
Oh,
They don't
yeah, yeah.
I don't know if at the time you could pay to be able to like go back in your swipes or like if you could pay to extend the region. Maybe that was a feature like to pay you pay and then you can get more super likes or you can also like project yourself into another city.
Yeah.
But yeah, it wasn't anything like how it is now. And I guess since then, the guy that I dated that I met from that time on dating apps, I did actually record a podcast episode with. It's one of the Boy Confessions episodes, if anyone wants to listen to it.
Yes, I've
And
listened. I've listened, and it's very good and
yeah,
really interesting.
yeah,
Some of the things he says. So definitely, guys, go listen to that
yeah.
and
We
share
didn't
thoughts.
speak for a year after that.
Oh my God.
Because I recorded it last May when I was in quarantine, coming
Yeah.
back to China. And then now it's July. And usually he would like message me every few months. And then I was like, oh, it's been a year since he's hit me up. But he did just slide into my DMs the other week. So
Interesting. Saying what?
it was like, oh, someone just sent me these pictures and it was like us DJing in like 2016. I was like, haha, slay. But then, yeah, so then since then, I guess there were times where I'd like downloaded the apps, but
Yeah.
not like really. I think I'd like set up a profile and like do a few swipes and be like, okay, I don't like this, and then like delete them.
Yeah.
And then, so yeah, most of the people that I've dated are people that I have like met physically first,
Yeah.
whether it's like through a friend of a friend or like at an event or yeah. So we've had like such different experiences when it comes to how we've met the trash that we've let into our lives.
That is a common denominator, though. They are all
Yeah,
trash. You just meet them in different ways.
exactly, exactly.
I I don't know whether it's maybe just me, but I
Mm.
find meeting people in person really difficult in
Mm-hmm.
Sydney.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you go out, people aren't just like really coming up to you in like restaurants or even
Mm-hmm.
bars. Like people just go with their friends, they stick to their friends, and then they go
Mm.
home.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and even like some clubs, I don't really go to that many clubs, but even
Mm-hmm.
if I do, I mean, some people definitely like do come up and talk to you, but I'm not necessarily interested in them.
Mm-hmm.
So then, nothing really eventuates. I've occasionally been to a couple of house parties where people have come up and like, spoken to me and like asked me out, but I've known instantly, okay, I don't really
Mm-hmm.
feel that for them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, basically for me, it's just been Hinge.
Mm.
I would totally be open to meeting people in person. And I've actually asked my friends, I've been like, guys, do you work with anyone or do you know any guys you can set me up with? Like, that's how
Mm-hmm.
desperate I'm getting. But they, I don't know. It's kind of weird here in Sydney. People just don't,
Mm.
my friends just don't really know anyone. And they're like, dude, if we knew someone, then we would try to meet them. They're like, the men we know, we will not set you up with.
Yeah. So most of your friends around you are single as well.
Yes, yeah, yeah. I would say like maybe 70% of like my close girlfriends are single, which I
Uh-huh.
think makes a big difference in the way I date
Mm-hmm.
because I have like great girlfriends that I go out with and we can share these stories
Mm-hmm.
and whereas I think I have like other actually like group of friends where they're all in relationships and it's harder to, I guess, connect with them in that way. And I think
Mm.
if I only knew people in relationships, I would have the urge to be in a relationship
Yeah.
because everyone would be settling down. They'd only be hanging out with their boyfriends. But luckily enough, I'm not like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my friends aren't like that. So
Mm.
I haven't, I don't really have that problem yet. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure like once I hit 30 and
Mm-hmm.
after, like that
Mm-hmm.
might be more of an issue.
But they're all like similar age to you, your friends that are single as well.
Yes, yeah, yeah. We're all kind of like mid to late 20s. And like I have a few friends who are in relationships, a couple that are married,
Mm-hmm.
but the majority are literally in the trenches with
Okay.
me on Hinge.
Okay.
So often like we will match with the same people on Hinge. Yeah,
Oh.
yeah,
So
yeah.
are they also looking for, are they like you? They're just kind of like casual or like not sure what they're looking for yet, or they're like wanting to settle down? Like, is there a difference in people's approach within your friend group to dating?
Yeah. I would say a lot are similar to me, where they're just
Mm-hmm.
dating around, seeing who they vibe with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and others, I can't really think of any friend who's like really intentionally looking for a
Mm-hmm.
husband.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other thing about my group of friends, or when you're in law or like banking or finance, you're very career
Mm-hmm.
minded.
Mm-hmm.
So career comes first,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is a good thing because you're bettering yourself and you're
Mm-hmm.
doing really well at work. And
Mm-hmm.
so relationships, I feel, do slide
Mm-hmm.
off to the side a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but no, like we all are going through like the same issues and but it also makes it like a really like kind of empowering experience and makes me feel less alone
Yeah.
because I, obviously do have times where I feel lonely and kind of wonder, okay, I've been single for 3 years now. Like,
Mm-hmm.
am I doing something wrong? Is there something wrong with me? Am I not like, you know, projecting myself properly to the men I date? But
Mm-hmm.
then I look at my friends who are incredible. Like they're
Mm-hmm.
so funny, they're so smart, they're beautiful. And I'm like, well, there's nothing wrong with being single because these people are single.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Yeah. So before you felt like, or you put more emphasis on like relationship status in terms of how you defined yourself or like your self-worth.
Oh, yeah. I think when I was growing up, at least, I expected at my age, I would at least like be in a relationship
Mm-hmm.
or, be married at my age. But I
Mm-hmm.
think as you grow up,
Mm,
and develop, you realize that being in a relationship like that is not necessarily, I mean, it can be a great thing if it's a good relationship, but
mm-hmm,
just having a boyfriend, that doesn't mean your life is going to be better.
mm-hmm.
Um, you like, I've seen people in relationships where I wonder what they are doing together because, she's everything and he's just Ken, right?
Period. Yes.
And so I see those relationships and I'm like, she would be so much better off being single than tied
Mm,
down to this
yeah,
fucking dusty, right? And I'm like,
literally.
so for me, I think the same. I'm like,
Mm,
I am going to be single until I find someone who like matches my energy
mm-hmm,
and can put as much into like a relationship and
mm,
treat me well.
mm-hmm,
Um, because there's so much else in my life that I am like, having fun with
mm, mm,
and
mm.
doing well. And I'm like, I
Yeah,
don't need a man.
I love that. I think especially like pre-30 age, if you're not in a serious, like I think life can kind of deviate in two directions for people in their late 20s. It's like there's a group of people who will settle down and like get married, have kids, and then there's other people who don't do that by choice or by force. And then society obviously like validates the more traditional path in more explicit ways or more overt ways, and then not so much like the other part, especially for women. But I do think that like for me, most of my friends around me are single as well. And the people that are in relationships, like I love that for them, but I'm not like, I want that for me. I'm like, that's cool if you guys enjoy that, but like, I wouldn't want to be in a relationship like yours. And that's not to devalue your relationship, but that's for me to like reflect and appreciate and ground myself in where I'm at. And then like today was like the first time I went on Facebook in months because I saw I had someone message me in like February or something and I didn't see it. So it means I probably haven't been on Facebook since like even before then. And then I just like scrolled on the newsfeed and it was literally just marriage, 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 babies, marriage, babies. And I was like, oh, okay, I can see why like people that I know in Perth who are single, but around people that are in relationships and also on Facebook might feel like, you know, like there's something wrong with them or whatever, or like they should be in a relationship. But it also like solidified for me. I was like, oh, like I don't see stuff like that every day. So I don't think about whether I should have a husband or whether I should be having kids. So I think like this speaks like a wider point, which is like exposing your like what do you expose yourself to and how does that affect how you see yourself and where you think you should be in life? Because like I just like looking at like crazy TikToks and
Yeah.
memes, which is like a
Same.
yeah, which just like kind of reflects, you know, things that I think are funny or like my unhinged state of mind, maybe. So I don't have much to compare. I'm not like constantly feeding myself with content that's making me compare myself to other people. Like, or I look at things that I feel like I can learn from rather than like aspire to or feel like jealous towards. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's great when girls can be like single together and enjoy their lives rather than because I've had people ask me questions about like, oh, they have friends that are in relationships and then her relationship starts to kind of like not work out and she's trying to exit, but then the friends are like, oh, just make it work, like blah blah blah. And then there's
No,
like this,
don't dump
yeah,
them.
exactly. Then there's like this cognitive dissonance, and this person is like feeling like they should just be in a relationship for the sake of it. But all those other people, like I asked them like, do you aspire for a relationship that's like theirs? And then they said no. And I was like, yeah, then you shouldn't be taking relationship advice from them.
Exactly. No, I think like it's so normal in your late 20s to feel like that.
Mm,
And I do feel that pressure though. And especially it's like from my parents who
mm-hmm.
are like, when are you going to settle down? Blah, blah.
Oh my God. So your parents do actually ask you that?
Yes. Yeah, 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 definitely.
Wow.
And that is stressful,
Mm-hmm.
but I totally agree in that. I just think it's rare to find relationships that I even aspire to. There's only a few, oh, I want a relationship like yours, right? Even in my 3 years of dating, I've only met maybe a couple of people that I'm like, wow, maybe that could have been something. And they were like that great that I, wanted something a bit more with them, right? But most people you meet once you start dating, you realize they're not worth your time and they're not worth being in a relationship with. And I won't just be tied down so that I can tell people on Facebook that I'm engaged and that I'm doing the normal life path thing, because there's like 8 billion ways to live your life.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. And you could just delete Facebook, out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly.
Easy.
And also so many people in relationships, they want to be single, honestly. Like I've
Yes.
heard this from people. The grass is always greener on the other side. And there are definitely times where I want to be in a relationship as well. Like I wish I had that company. If I, was like planning a trip for next year to like the Sunshine Coast to Noosa. And I was like, you know what? I would actually love to go with a boyfriend because it's kind of none of my friends were like that keen. So like little things like that, but like 90% of the time, I'm like content where my life is at. And when I see people getting married or having babies, I feel happy for them, but I don't feel any jealousy yet.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, love that for you. That means I can delay any plans or pressure that might be put on me. And I think like to your point about, people that are in relationships have moments where they wish they were single. People that are single have moments where they wish they're in relationships. Like that's totally normal. And I think at the end of the day, it's like embracing the state that you're currently in, because that will change eventually. And then a part of you will wish for like what you had before. But if you're really embracing and making the most of your time when you're single, then you'll be so much more intentional when you're in a relationship, and you won't feel like, oh, you didn't get to do everything you wanted when you were single and now you resent being in a relationship. Or it's like you didn't get to do everything that you wanted in the relationship that you were in and you fucked it up and now you're single, and then you're like stuck in this cycle. So I think like also like what you said, it's like 99% of the time you're happy and you're content with where you're at. That's so important, because it's not necessarily about eliminating those feelings, but managing like the ratio so that you're like, okay, I'm feeling like a little too lonely. What can I do to like connect more with people around me or connect with my friends? Or maybe I can be going out on some dates and seeing what's out there. Like, yeah, definitely. It's not really, I think that sometimes people approach dating or just like certain significant like markers of like success or whatever in life and think like, okay, once I have that thing, all my problems will go away. Like it's like an elimination contest, but it's really just like, a process of exploring and experiencing different parts of yourself and like different types of connections and different just like things in general, I guess. But yeah, I don't feel bad about literally every day I wake up and I'm like, I am obsessed with my life. I'm like, white sheets, clean room, could do whatever I want. Thank you, Jesus. Don't have to like check my phone and be like, oh, did you text me back? Or like, oh, do I have to organize time for this? I love it. And then one day I'll be in a relationship and I'll be happy because I chose the right person to be with. And I was intentional in that decision rather than like, yeah, literally like I think about the guys that I've had like semi offers from recently. And I'm just like, no, I don't want to wake up next to a guy who's like sucking on a vape, like ill.
Oh my God. I've literally been there.
I cannot.
Literally.
I get such an ick from vaping. It makes me
Oh my God. Well, funnily enough, the guy who ghosted me, like, smoked so many cigarettes.
really.
Like,
He was like
and
a
in
workout freak.
yeah, I know. It's so weird, right? But he smoked so much. And it's funny because one of my general red flags is smoking. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't like when people smoke cigarettes.
Mm-hmm.
No offense to anyone who smokes cigarettes, as in, like, it's fine to do, but I just probably wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
like date a smoker.
Yeah.
But yet I meet this guy and I'm so willing to overlook his like and smoking because he's very good looking. And I'm
Yeah.
like, where are my standards? Where are
Yeah.
my standards?
Dude, hot male privilege. It's crazy. Like literally I was thinking like, oh, The things that I overlooked for a guy that I thought was cute. Like if I just thought he was ugly, and this is what I'm going to do now is like gaslight myself into being like, he's not that hot. There's nothing else that he's like offering me. I'm like, you're just cute, but what else? Like nothing.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, like what I found is that when you're very like intensely physically attracted to someone, like you forget about everything else
Yeah.
when it comes to them, like all their red flags, or like the disrespect they may be showing you,
Mm-hmm.
because your brain is literally just like very
Stigmatized.
attracted to them. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Right. And I'm
Yeah.
so willing to suddenly like double text or drunk text or
Mm-hmm.
drunk video call a man just because he has nice arms. Like, you
Yeah.
know, whereas with if you're just like normal with a guy to a
Mm-hmm.
normal person, you actually have like your head screwed on straight.
Mm-hmm.
So I think also with hot people now, this is actually another good thing that dating has taught me is now that I've like dated some like really good looking men,
Mm-hmm.
as in like been on dates with them, I'm
Mm-hmm.
like they are just like normal people.
Yeah.
They are just as messed up as everyone else.
Yeah.
And also if you don't feel any kind of emotional connection, like there's no chemistry, no banter, then honestly their looks just fade.
Mm.
Whereas like I've been on dates with guys who might have not been as technically hot as those other guys, but
Mm-hmm.
you just feel something for them because they are so funny and they're so smart.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like a totally different,
Mm.
experience. So
Mm.
anyway, no more hotties. No more hotties.
Mid men only.
Yeah.
No, no, we can't have this. How do you
No.
feel about like paying on dates? Like, do you pay or do you split?
Oh, okay. So I usually offer to split. It depends what
Mm-hmm.
kind of dates.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think I have, yeah, usually offered to split, and some guys will accept splitting a little bit too quickly. They're like, yep, yep,
Mm-hmm.
yep. I'm like, oh, you're meant to hesitate.
At least pretend.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But then other guys will, they will just like offer to get the whole bill. But I will say, I haven't found it correlates to whether they actually like you or want to see you again. Like
Mm.
I've had guys who have insisted on paying, and yet they've actually ended up like rejecting me
Mm-hmm.
and being not feeling it. Whereas I've had guys who have actually like really liked me, really wanted to see me again, and they've been fine with splitting dates. So
Mm-hmm.
now I don't really see it as a sign whether like, someone does like me or
Mm-hmm.
what it really means. I just think, with inflation, people are trying to
Yeah, the
people are
housing
trying to
crisis
save
in
the house.
Australia.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like the way that people perceive money and value money is very different and like specific to each individual. One type of behavior towards money can be indicative of like of different things. So for example, like a guy who is pushing to pay for the whole bill, maybe that's his way of like wrapping it up and being like, okay, I'm just going to like pay so that I don't feel like I owe her anything. Or another
Yeah,
guy
yeah,
might be like, I'm going to pay because I want to demonstrate that I'm like invested in this. And
yeah,
then another guy might be like, I'm happy, I need to split because I don't want to see them again. Or
yeah,
like, I don't mind splitting because like she offered to split. And
yeah.
if we're going to be in a relationship, this is how I want to like be doing things. I mean, I'm not crazy about like splitting bills with men on the first date, but
I know you're definitely like anti that. It
but I think
just
it's
like,
different for Hinge as well because it's like
yeah,
you're like really meeting a stranger for the most part, I think. But for me, if a guy kind of has like a feel for who I am and we already have like met each other and we semi know each other, I feel like then there's like more at stake when they ask you out and you agree. So it's like you should pay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I also feel like in that scenario, he wants to show you that it is very datey and he's very
Mm.
interested in you,
Yeah,
right?
like they want to
Whereas,
take it from the casual acquaintance level to like a
exactly.
date scenario, but then on a dating app, it's like everyone's here.
Yeah,
for dating.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. So they think less of it, right?
Yeah.
I also think like a few other factors influence it. Like if I go on a date with a guy who is like a lot older than me or is in a
Mm.
profession where he's
Yeah, I was going to ask
earning,
about like age.
yeah, where he's earning like way more than me, I found that those guys will definitely insist to pay.
Hmm.
And to be honest, like I usually kind of do expect it because I'm like, look, you're like maybe 7 or 8 years older than me.
Hmm.
Like you should have more money than me,
Yeah.
honestly. If you don't, that is alarming.
That's a failure to thrive as a man.
Exactly, exactly. Whereas like if someone's like the same age, similar profession,
Mm.
I don't really expect them to get the whole bill always because I'm
Hmm.
like, oh, I guess we're like in very similar situations in life anyway.
Hmm. That's
Those are like
true.
a couple of other factors that
Mm.
affect it.
Do you feel like you have a preference for age or you're kind of like open?
Oh,
Or
okay.
how have
Um,
your like how have your experiences like differed from like dating younger guys or like same age guys to dating older guys?
yeah, so I definitely have a preference for older. I will
Mm-hmm.
say like at least maybe 3 years older than me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to I think like the oldest I've dated older than me was maybe like 7 years older than me.
Mm-hmm.
Which isn't huge. I definitely like one of my best friends literally only dates guys that are like 10 years older than her, right?
Mm-hmm.
Never really date guys that are younger than me. I think the Norwegian exchange student, he was
Mm-hmm.
a year older than me.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I don't know why. I think for me, maybe it is like a bit of a traditional thing, like the guy's
Mm-hmm.
meant to be older, or I'm attracted to traits that older guys give off. Like it's the
Mm-hmm.
confidence, the
Mm-hmm.
assertiveness, they've had
Mm-hmm.
more life experience.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, feeling like they
yeah,
might have something that they can teach you or tell you about because they've been alive
exactly,
longer than
exactly.
you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You should have more,
Yeah.
have more in your life, right?
Yeah.
But it honestly, experiences with all guys have been the same for me. Like
Mm.
they're definitely not necessarily more mature. Like this guy that just
Mm-hmm.
ghosted me, right? He's
Mm-hmm.
like 6 years older than me. He still ghosted. He still didn't have the balls to actually text me.
Mm-hmm.
So whereas like younger guys sometimes like the or guys at least my age may have been more respectful in that way.
Mm.
So yeah. What about you? Do you have age preferences?
I have dated a little bit older. I think the oldest was maybe like 7 or 8 years older. And then I've also like had encounters with younger, maybe like a month or a year younger, and then like a few years younger. Yeah, it's kind of the same shit, you know. I don't think age is like a I think age can like there are some things that guys that are no. Like I guess generally speaking, there are some things that older guys they just have a better understanding of because they've been through like a specific cycle. They've observed something in reality more than a younger guy. But
Yeah,
I think the issue is that you don't know when someone says something whether they truly know and understand it or whether they just are repeating something that they've heard is true, you know? Like,
yeah,
yeah, like it could be easy for someone to say, like, yeah, you know, you just don't take things personally, like it's not that big a deal. Anybody can say that, and there is truth to that saying, but then that person can still be someone that takes things very personally. And like
yeah,
you end up in like an argument with them about something that you said that was not personal, but they're taking it as, you know, like, so
yeah, yeah,
you will only know that about people through spending time with them. You cannot gauge from them saying it in that moment when you don't know them well enough, whether or not they have like integrity or like self awareness. So it's kind of like you just have to see how they respond to the world around them, how you guys interact, which is annoying because I don't really have the patience for it right now. But
yeah, exactly. Who has the time to actually properly get to know a man
I
and to see if they can go through?
know.
It is hard. I will say though, the other thing that older men might have is like more relationship experience, which I think can
Mm-hmm.
be good.
Yeah.
in the sense that, okay, they know commitment generally, whether they have been committed, I don't know. They've met more people, so they I guess know how to like date. But I've also found on the flip side that they might have an ex that they're like still hung up on. Like
Yeah.
the girl that we dated 4 years ago, whereas younger guys, I think maybe are a bit less like that. But maybe I'm just generalizing here because
Yeah.
I'm just thinking back to my experiences. But yeah, I do feel like maybe not age-wise, but generally I have a type when it comes to dating. It has been white. It has been a lot of white guys who have been, like maybe 5 to 6 years older than me, who all, funnily enough, live in like the same area of Sydney, which is like the eastern suburbs. They all have been to like private schools. A couple have even like been to like boarding school, which is really random. I don't know why. Like they all just come from like that area. And my friends, they're like, just date someone differently.
Yeah.
To that type. And I've tried, and yet I keep coming back to them.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't really have like a type when it comes to someone's background. If I think about like guys I've dated recently, like, I don't know, I haven't really been going out of my way for like relationships related things in the last few years. So it's difficult for me to be like, what is my type, or like who am I attracted to? Because I might have a crush on someone for like a week and then I'll get the ick and be over it, like so it's hard to say in terms of type, but I think like I have no idea like what I'm looking for, or if I even want anything at the moment. Like if something presents itself to me that's interesting, I won't say no, but I'm not like I'm dating to marry, or I'm dating for, I don't know. I'm just trying to be hot and have fun right now.
Yeah, no, that I feel that so much. Yeah, I feel like even me dating white guys, it's not because I like actively look for them. Like I, on Hinge at least, I'm like swiping on anyone that's cute. I don't really care about race. It's just that's kind of how it's ended up.
Yeah, and it's Australia, like,
Yeah, exactly. Like I
tough.
live in Sydney, right?
It's like a mayonnaise bowl.
Exactly.
With just little flecks of pepper, So I don't blame you. So my friend is in her mid-30s, and she told me a story recently that gave me hope. She was like walking down the street in Shanghai. It was like so hot. She was with her dog. She was like sweating, and this guy like came up to her. And at first she was kind of like creeped out, but he was like, "Oh, like, what's your name? Blah, blah, blah." And they started talking. And then he's been very like direct in sort of pursuing her. And she was like, her recent dating experiences have all been with guys that have been like in their mid to late 30s. And she said that the common thing about them is that you could tell that they've all like been through some shit. Like whether it's they've come out of a serious relationship, or they've started going to therapy, or they've just like, she was like, yeah, this guy who was like being very intentional. And she's not like, oh my God, we're going to fall in love. She's just like impressed that he's being assertive. But she was like, yeah, he's like being divorced, and you could tell that he's like reflected on himself, and he's like doing well in work. So he feels like confident in himself, and he can also gauge with her, like that she is also like doing well in her career. She's happy, single. She has like great energy, great style. So that gave me hope, because I don't think you hear as much about women that are in their 30s and like not in a serious relationship. And she was in a serious relationship for like 6 or 7 years until like her early 30s, and then she's in her like renaissance, been in her renaissance for the last few years, like being single. And then I think it's cool, because I don't feel like I personally am going to be like settling down in my early 30s. Like I have no intention or plans to do that. And I think that it's cool to know that like life goes on. And then also she told me stories recently about how she was traveling around Europe, and she like met up with some friends, and then she also spent periods of it solo. And then like hot guys that she met while she was like traveling alone, which is like so different when you're in your 30s compared to when you're in your 20s. Like it's so much more dangerous when you're younger. Guys that you might meet that are like all like backpacking or like, you know, whatever, I don't know. But for her, she was like meeting cute guys just like on the street in Europe as a hot single 30 something.
Oh, okay.
So
okay, that does give me hope.
yeah, it's not like you're just gonna like shrivel up and become irrelevant. Like if anything, dating can be so much more fun when you're older. You feel more secure in your career. You are more like financially stable, and then you also have a level of confidence that comes with just having experienced more of the world. Like that's something that I think society is always trying to take away from people, especially women, making you think that you only have value when you're young. But in reality, your life can only get better as you get older because you accumulate more resources, you have more experience, you are able to like spot bullshit. If you're like taking the time to learn and develop yourself, then life can only get better. You know, like I don't want to go back to being 18. Like my friend today showed me a picture of me from like 5 years ago, and I'm like unrecognizable. But like,
yeah,
I was like, I love that for us. Like, never
Yeah.
assume you've peaked. Like, you can only get hotter. And then she's also like in her early to mid 30s. And actually, like, the first podcast episode that I ever did was inspired by her and like the
Oh my God.
situation she was going through because she was married and like cheating on her husband and then
Oh my
cut
God.
contact with the guy that she was having an affair with. And then he was like trying to reach out to her. So that was like 2-3 years ago maybe that I did the first episode, and then I literally just caught up with her today and she was like giving me updates on that situation. But she's like entering a whole new era of her life because now she's like separating from her husband and like going to be living by herself for the first time in like 10-12 years. And then
Wow.
you know, like and she's 34, so she already has been married and like ticked that off her list, you know, in a way. And yeah, she has like a lot of her own things around how she feels about marriage and like going through a separation. But I'm like, I don't know. It's like you've freed up so much space for you to experience new things now because you're not spending energy like feeling bad about your marriage and like feeling bad about this guy that you were like having an affair with or that you couldn't really figure out or whatever. Like the world's your oyster.
Yeah, no, I feel like I'm like very pro divorce when it comes to that stuff because I'm like, yes, people can have like live different lives, right? Like that period of her life is over and now she's just starting another period. Like in any big life change you have from like high school to uni or when you move countries, like going from a marriage to being single, that's just like another step, even though people see it as a failure. And I'm sure, you know, I haven't been through a divorce. I like can't relate. I'm sure it's very, very painful, but it's also just like reframing how we like see women and even see like a successful life. People always think that has to be marriage and babies. But as I've grown older, I'm like, no. For me, it's just being a better version of yourself, whether that's like traveling heaps or like in your case, like it's like DJing or being a consultant or podcasting or for me, it's like listening to different music and you know, knowing more about the world and being better at my job. Like those are like different eras you can just kind of go through.
That's why I say like sometimes you just haven't been alive long enough to see how your life will change. And then when you get to a certain age, and I think particularly for me in my late 20s now, I'm like, oh, so it's just going to be like cycles of things happening back to back in parallel as I continue. It's not like, you know, oh, I have this one friend breakup and then I'm never going to have a friend breakup again. It's like, you don't know who you may or may not stay close with moving forward. But the best thing that you can do is to be as present as you can in your relationships now and in the experiences that you're having so that you don't look back and wish that you could do it differently or regret the place that you're in now. So I think for anyone who like really wants to be having kids, enjoy the time that you are child free, because once you have those children, you cannot return them. There's no going back, you know? And I just think like, oh my God, I just can't even imagine the amount of pressure and responsibility that people are under when they first have kids, especially. Enjoy the time where you don't yet have the thing that you think that you need to be happy. find a way to be happy now, and then that thing will find its way to you eventually, and you'll experience like,
Oh, absolutely. Like I can't imagine having kids for like literally another 5 or probably 10 years because there's
mm-hmm,
so much in my life
mm-hmm,
I want to do before then that just like isn't feasible
mm-hmm.
with having a child. Like even
Yeah.
going to Glastonbury, I'm like, I
Yeah.
can't go to Glastonbury with a kid, you
Yeah.
know?
It's even tough to like figure out those things for yourself. And then you've got to
Yeah.
figure it out with a child and potentially like a partner.
No. Exactly. Exactly.
I want my life to be as easy as possible. I'm not trying to do more.
Same, same. And I just like, I can't imagine waking up early to make someone else food. When you're a parent. And I
Yeah.
really, I don't even do that for myself
Yeah.
right
For someone
now.
else who doesn't even pay rent. Like, the fuck? Do you want to talk about like your experience as a woman of color with dating, or just like growing up in Australia in general? I think we have a lot of listeners that are also part of like a diaspora, children of immigrants, etc. Like, any insights or like specific sorts of experiences that you've had, or like things that you've realized in that process?
Yeah. So I feel like I am so much more confident in being a person of color now
Mm-hmm.
compared to like 10 or 15 years ago when I was growing up.
Mm.
I grew up in like very white areas and went to like white dominated schools as well. So
Mm-hmm.
that was so, like that was like the beauty standard was to be white and have blonde hair.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that actually used to really affect my self-esteem. And I still think it does in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
But you're
because
beautiful. You don't need to
thank
compare.
you. But I feel like even now in like the present context of like dating, sometimes I'll always wonder, oh, am I this person's type? You know?
Oh.
Yeah, because I'm just like, oh, surely, he would just be into white girls. I know that's such a weird way of thinking, but my one
Mm.
question I always like ask a guy, maybe on like the second or third date, I'm like, what's your type? Do you have a type? Yeah.
Mm.
I'm always, I think it's maybe like this real internalized thing have had since childhood, just thinking like, the good looking guys, they just like white girls. It's
Oh.
wrong, obviously. But I think it was just shaped from experiences when I was younger, where I would
Yeah.
have crushes on boys and they wouldn't be into me. They would be into like the prettiest white girl in the class.
Mm.
Um, and, the popular girls at school, they were all white.
Mm-hmm.
And what you saw in the media, like, Victoria's Secret was like a massive thing. Remember that? And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, women of color were just like the minority
Mm-hmm.
then. Um, and so in dating, it feels like sometimes I still think I have self-esteem issues around that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then generally, I think I don't know how much of this you experienced growing up, but I was like racially abused when I was,
Mm.
when I was a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
I had people hurl things at me like, go back to where you came from, or shout things out in cars to me and my friends.
Mm.
Or I remember being in primary school actually, and I like was in like a weird photo shoot with a
Mm-hmm.
few classmates, and I had like won this award, and the a photographer from our local newspaper came, and it's like me and two of my friends who are like, white girls. And and my teacher wanted me to be at the front, obviously, because I'd won this award. And so um, she'd like, yeah, put me at the front. And then the photographer was like, no, I want those two girls at the front. So he then puts me at the back, even though I had won the award, right? And
Excuse me?
I know. And it's so weird looking back now, but it
Mm.
really affected me at the time because
Mm.
I immediately thought, and this was as like a 10-year-old, I'm like, oh, it's because I'm ugly. It's because I don't look like those girls. And
Mm.
because, the photographer also obviously wants like cuter people in this photo. And that's why he put me at the back. And,
It's
you
because
know,
he's racist and stupid
but
and
yeah, like
unprofessional.
very unprofessional, right? But
Mm.
like, you don't know that as a 10-year-old.
Yeah, of course
And so,
not.
like, as a child, I kind of grew up with all this, like, I guess, hatred in a way towards my skin color, always wishing I was like whiter, wishing I remember having this period where I was like, I really wished that I was white and had like green eyes and like blonde or red hair. I was just like obsessed with it. And I wanted my name to be like Claudia or something, like random. Yeah.
Oh my God.
It was so bizarre, but I wanted to be someone else for so long. But as I've grown up and been out in the real world more, I've like recognized the beauty in being brown and being an ethnic woman. And I've like embraced my culture so much more.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you felt this as well.
Yeah.
Once I left high school, it was like a real like different moment for me, because I also met people at uni who are of my ethnic background, so we could relate to all this. And I think the media changed then as well.
Yeah,
So there was,
definitely.
you know,
And social media as well.
exactly, that changed it. So a lot of the voices that are the dominant voices are not just white people anymore. It's actual influencers that are people of color. So that changed the way I saw myself as well. And even like the Kardashians, who people, you know, talk a lot of shit about, that I still think that they have actually really normalized a different beauty standard in a way of like, you know, women that are curvier who have like kind of more ethnic looking features, which when I was very young, that was not it. And so, yeah, the way I see myself and my skin color and my body is just so different to how I saw it, like, you know, 10 to 15 years ago. How do you feel?
I think that I definitely had similar experiences to you growing up, and they continued into university. Like when I was at university, it was still very white, because I think Perth is much smaller. Yeah, much smaller than Sydney. Not as many like international students. And even then, like I have a different background to students that have come to Australia from overseas, like as young adults. So I think like I don't know if I ever wished to be white, because I think I was very close. Like all my close girlfriends were white. And I was like, I don't really envy the way that you're being treated by boys, even though you get more attention from them. I don't want that for me. Like, I'm not even interested in those guys anyway. I'm good, like, not being attractive to them, but I will not stand for being treated differently or to be being disrespected because of my race. And then I think I definitely went through a very intense, like, Asian angst phase, which was because of like my personality. I would like satirize and share my experiences with racism as like a coping mechanism. And because I think that I was more outspoken about these issues, even if it was in a small way, like for me, I consider myself like a small fish, Lindsay. I don't think I'm like that opinionated, because I'm influenced by people that are like even more opinionated or even more visible than me. But relative to the people I was around or the people that I can be around, I'm considered like radical, which is like insane because I'm like not even close. So I think like that affected some of my relationships, like friendship wise, and then also kind of in dating, in the sense that even if a guy was like attracted to me and he liked me, he couldn't reconcile with that part of me that was like, fuck white people, fuck whiteness, like fuck white supremacy. Because it's not about hating white people, it's like hating systems of white oppression. But they just like didn't actually understand that. They hadn't done any of that work yet. So that did affect some things. And then I think in terms of, but I got to a point where I was like, because I was sharing stuff that was like calling out like racism or like trying to process the racism I was experiencing, eventually I got to a point where I was just like, I'm like sick of myself talking about this. Like, I am Chinese, and like people are racist and I have to figure out a way to like move through the world without that affecting me so much. So I just got to a point where I was like, okay, well, it doesn't help me to actually keep talking about this anymore. Like at first it was helpful because I felt less alone. I was able to connect with other women of color on the internet, especially. But then I was just like, okay, you know what? Me living my best life is representation in and of itself. And that's kind of like where I decided to focus my energy on. Instead of feeling like I was defined by my ethnicity, I was like defining what it meant to be like a Chinese Australian in a way, like for myself. And then I think like being in Shanghai and going back and forth from China and Australia had a really big impact on that, because I was seeing contemporary China and like what's happening here now, separate to like Western political commentary, geopolitical tension. And because I was able to connect with other people that have had similar experiences to me, and then also like local Chinese who have a totally different experience to me, but are so open to like sharing that with me, or like, you know, connecting and like having a good time together. Yeah, I think a lot less about how my ethnicity plays into my romantic relationships, I feel. But then I don't know, like there's definitely been guys that I can tell that aren't Chinese that I can tell have a thing for Asian girls, maybe, or like
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
their
Yeah.
ex was Korean and I'm Chinese. But then they've also dated like white girls as well. So I'm like, okay. Um, yeah, I mean, I can't blame them for liking Asian girls more. If that is their
Yeah.
preference. But it doesn't mean that I need to like be the one to fulfill that for them, you know. And I'm not
Yeah.
really interested in dating white guys ever now. So so I'm like okay with that, I guess. And then I guess when you date someone that's like the same ethnic background as you, for me in Shanghai, I found that there are guys that will ask like, do you prefer foreigners, because I grew up overseas. So
Wow.
they
Okay.
assume that I wouldn't like them because they're
Yeah.
Chinese. But I'm like, no, I actually prefer Chinese guys. And then, yeah, I guess like they're curious about like what other types of guys you've slept with. Like, oh, like,
Oh my
and
God.
like,
Interesting.
yeah. So I don't know. I'm just like, don't want to have these conversations with men at the moment. So I'm just going to keep to
Yeah.
myself.
Oh my God. No, I think
Yeah.
if a guy had asked me how many, white guys versus like brown guys versus Asian guys have you been with, I'd be like,
Yeah. I'd
that's
be
an
like,
intense.
that's none of your business.
Yeah.
Or they'd be like,
Literally.
oh, like white guys like bigger. And I would just be like, it
Oh
depends.
my God. Okay. No, no, I think okay, that is a weird question to ask.
But that's how fragile men are.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So insecure they are.
Or at least the ones that I've attracted recently. For you, because you're so genuine in the way that you respond to people and what they ask. If a guy asks you a question like that and you're uncomfortable, you don't have to give them a real answer.
Yeah, that's true. I actually struggle with that a lot, as in like
Yeah.
maintaining boundaries when it comes to men and the things they ask or do.
Mm,
Like I'm trying to get better at it,
you're too
but
good.
I think for
Not that
me,
you should change, but you should
yeah,
not that you should do anything, but allow yourself to let men prove to you that they get to see that side of you, or they get to get that treatment from you, because like they're a stranger. You don't need to be treating them like your bestie yet. You know, that's something that
yeah,
I think about,
yeah,
because I used to be similar too. I'd be like, oh, I need to be, I want them to feel like we can be friends the way that I'm friends with but I'm like, I think you need to like put men in a totally different category, especially when you first get to know them, and then suss whether or not it's like actually safe for you to open up to them more. And I think they actually know this on a subconscious level. Like they recognize that a woman is confronted with multiple options of like random guys, and in a way it's like they will appreciate you more if you give them the opportunity to prove to you that it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
they are worth trusting. If you trust them too soon, which is not your fault, like because you are a trusting person or because you want to see the best in people, they'll be like, so does she just do this with every guy? Or like,
Yeah. No,
because they're stupid.
I've had to figure this out, as in like not oversharing and giving too much on like dates and with them generally, because when I first started dating, I was just like kind of an open book, like how I am with anyone. And it would just be like trauma on a first date. And I'm like, this might not be giving off the right vibe. And then, you know, you might not go on a second or third date. And then you're like, oh, well, this person like knows my life story. Like, why do they even need to know all that about me? But now I'm way better at like figuring out how much do you actually want to share with that person. But I think the difficulty in that is you can't have too many walls up, or you're actually going to connect with someone on a deeper level at all, because suddenly, you know, I felt this with most recent guy who ghosted me. I was like, oh, there's nothing more emotional, but I was like, but that's also because I'm not actually telling him about anything deeper within me either. Because 3 years of dating, you just naturally like have walls up, right?
Yeah, I think it's like assessing on a case by case basis, because like with that guy, it's like he wasn't really ready. He wouldn't have been able to like receive that from you anyway. And like you knew that. So that's why. But in other situations, it's like, okay, you actually do like them and there is value in you trying to put yourself out there a bit.
Yeah. So I actually kind of went on dates with someone last year who was like great, like really, really funny, really smart. He's one of like the only guys in like the past few years where I genuinely really, really liked him. I liked him like almost too much, to the point where it like freaked me out. But I also felt like with him, I was like, oh, I probably could have been way more open in how I dealt with things with him. And maybe he would have seen like another side to me. So I remember he once made this comment and he's like, oh, you're so like happy and cheerful. And I wouldn't have expected you to have these like, you know, weird other interests. And I kind of thought to myself, oh my gosh, no, I am really weird, dude. I like seen that, you know, side of me yet. But that, you know, when I met him, it was like coming out of a time of getting over something else, like another situation in my life. So I just didn't want to be hurt again. I didn't want to like allow myself to like, you know, feel super deeply and become super anxious again over someone. So instead I closed myself off with that new guy. But you know, you do need to, as you say, like learn to open yourself up and open up your heart with the right people, because hey, maybe things could have been right. I don't think they would have been now, but like
things can go differently, or things can progress differently if you try something different for future.
Exactly. It's just, you know, I think learning about what patterns you have in like dating and relationships, figuring out, okay, are those patterns working for me? Are the people that I'm attracted to or I'm attracting, are they good people? And if those aren't working, figuring out, okay, what can I do differently? Maybe it is like not online dating, or maybe it's going for guys that you wouldn't normally go for. You know, maybe it's being really open with people as well.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt to give it a shot, as long as you're like aware of what you're doing and being intentional. Then you can always reflect and be like, okay, I did my best with the information that I had, and then how can I learn from this experience? Yeah,
exactly. Like I think in one of your podcast episodes you like talked about, you know, women using men as character development as well, because so many women feel like used by men, right? But I've never actually really felt that. I look back on these years and I'm like, oh, I've learned so much about myself. I've learned so much about what I like and how I date. And I've learned so much about the male species. And so
whether they have learned anything or not is irrelevant to you learning.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like I am so grateful for every single experience I've had,
Mm.
even bad ones,
Yeah,
because
same.
hate's taught me so much about myself. And actually that, hey, I am like a really kind and loving and generous person, even though that love isn't always like reciprocated back. At least
Mm.
I gave things my all and was really
Mm.
like honest and open, and yeah.
Yeah, that's still you, and there's no reason why you shouldn't do that if those are things about you that you love and appreciate. Like, that's not something that you should stop doing just because some other guy doesn't have the capacity for it.
Exactly. Like those like TikTok quotes that come up, and it's like there's this one kind of cheesy one, but I always think about it's like all the love that you give off to the wrong people will come back to you.
Mm.
And I think about that. I'm like, okay, that's what I hold on to, because I'm
Yeah.
like, one day you'll meet someone that, you know, matches all of the love that you've given off,
Mm.
you know.
That's a great
Um,
quote.
yeah. And it like really made me appreciate things a bit more. And I'm like, oh yeah, all these experiences, like I shouldn't be sad or upset
Mm.
that some things haven't worked out,
Mm.
because it's made me change and grow as a person as well.
Mm.
Um, and I know that when I meet the right person, hey, I'll do things differently then.
Yeah, because like I think about people I know that are kind of like stingy with their love, like, and it's like you're not going to get more love from
Yeah,
anyone
yeah,
if you're behaving that way.
yeah,
Like, I'm still a very loving person, even if like at the moment I'm very closed off to investing myself into something, but I'm doing that in an intentional way, in the sense that it's like I'm not going to lead on guys just for the
yeah, yeah,
attention, just because they like me, even though I know it's not going to go anywhere. Like, I'm pretty clear if I'm not feeling something, that it's like not going to happen, unlike men who are closed off and still pursuing women and then remaining closed off. But yeah, it's like I'm not going to not still be like loving and kind and generous just because like I've had previous experiences where I felt taken advantage of, or I've had like people around me who can't reciprocate that. It's like I still believe in the power of like being kind. And yeah.
one of my best high school friends. And we were best friends for 10 years. And maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, we had begun to drift. And she actually called me out on it. And she sent me messages and, had just said I hadn't been putting in enough effort into the friendship. And I apologized, but I was also like a little bit defensive. So we shared a few messages that were pretty combative. But she still said at the end of those messages, hey, I still want to be friends. And I did something terrible, which I will admit right now. I never replied at the time. Like 3.5 years ago, I didn't know how to deal with the situation. And so I didn't respond. I guess I had felt like I had outgrown the friendship a bit, and I felt a bit defensive when she was saying that I had kind of lent on her a lot and things like that. And so I didn't respond at the time, but I felt so much guilt about it over the years. And I have always like drafted messages to send to her, but never sent them, because I just thought, okay, after all this time, she won't want to hear from me, right? Like she's probably so mad at me. But actually, a few days ago, I finally reached out to her after all this time. And I sent her a really long text apologizing for everything. And that I just said, I'm just so sorry for ghosting you years ago. Like, you didn't deserve it. You were such a kind friend. But I guess I felt like I had outgrown the friendship a bit, but I should have communicated that to you. And I told her in those texts, I was like, please don't feel obliged to reply. It's been years. It's literally been years and we haven't spoken. And she actually replied the next morning with the sweetest text message. And she said, yeah, and she just forgave me and just said, look, it's okay. I know that stuff happens. Like, you did really hurt me and it made me angry that you never replied. But I know that like life is complicated and things happen. And I like she forgave me basically for all
Mm.
that.
Mm.
And so after all these years, we're actually catching up for dinner next week.
Oh my God, that's so cute.
Yeah. But I guess like that's an example of like when you do give love off or you give forgiveness, it will come back to you as well.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I don't even know if I necessarily deserve all this like kindness from her after this long, but it's just so nice that we're able to mature as well. Like sometimes I think with situations like that, it just needs time. Like time heals everything, right? And so years from the friendship, I think we both look back on that with different eyes now and have grown up a lot. Whereas at the time, if I had replied to her and we kept trying to be friends, I know that it just wouldn't have gone well because we weren't seeing eye to eye and we had different expectations of the friendship. Whereas now, 3 years later, I'm like, okay, I think we can be friends again. And we know where our heads are at and we're so much more honest with each other and kind to each other and forgiving as well.
Oh my God, that's such a beautiful story. I hope it goes well. And of course, you deserve like kindness and love from her because it's what you give to so many people. And you're right about like sometimes time needs to pass until you receive clarity on a situation, whether that is that there is nothing to continue or that maybe there is something that you can like pick up again. Yeah, I think like I definitely have tried to lean more into not feeling like I have to force things if it doesn't feel like natural to me in that moment. And then giving myself time to think like, do I want to do that? Don't I want to do that? Does it really matter? Yeah, but whereas before I used to feel like I have to know now in this moment because I've thought about it. Like, what do I do? It's like you don't actually have to do anything right now.
Yeah. Sometimes like I just think, time is like the biggest healer of all. It gives you new perspective. With some like situations like dating or friendship situations I've had in the past, in that immediate moment afterwards or the days right afterwards, I've been so angry or upset. And I'm like, I thought in such black and white terms, everything, right? Whereas now I look back on situations with more compassion for myself and more compassion for the other person as well. I'm like, oh, I said some things that were hurtful, but they did as well, but we're just trying to figure it out. Very few people, especially friends, come at things with hate. Like most people are actually genuinely, I think, quite good people inside. They just go about things in different ways. And even with like some dating situations I've had in the past where I felt like guys weren't as open and honest as they could have been, I now don't harbor any ill feelings towards them. I'm just like, okay, we go about things in different ways, obviously. And I wish I'd gotten a final text from them or I gotten an explanation about something from them. But ultimately, I think if you dislike someone or you hate someone, that sits in your heart more than anything. And it tears you apart. It doesn't do anything to the situation and you don't look at things with a clear head.
So mature, Sarah. We love.
On your actual questions, I have to say what my star sign is because
I true. Yes. Please reveal your star sign and your personality type if you have, if you know them.
So I'm a Gemini, I'm a May baby, and my star...
I love the pride you have with like because in comparison to like the boy confessions episode that we mentioned before, he was getting a little bit like defensive about being a May Gemini.
No, I'm like, dude, why would you not embrace it? I'm sorry, we're awesome.
Yeah.
We're freaking awesome.
Exactly.
And I'm gonna check my co-star right now for like my other rising stuff because I don't just remember that off the top of my head. I'm a Gemini and my moon is Libra and my rising is Leo.
Wow. I'm a Leo rising too. Slay.
Yeah, I love that. And then my personality type is an ENFP.
Wow. I'm an INFP. So we make a great
Oh my God.
team.
Okay. This makes sense. Sense.
We love.
But I would love to be on again.
Yes.
Part 2.
Okay. Oh wait.
Hinge.
What's our like, yeah, more unhinged hinged stories, please? Okay, even though this is a question they usually ask dudes, maybe we can do it both ways. Like, what kind of guy, like based on what you know about me, what kind of man or relationship do you think I not should be in or like would be best for me? And then I'll like say what I think for you.
Oh, okay. I actually feel like I can see you with someone in like the tech space, weirdly, like a mature older man in the
Uh-huh.
tech space or
Mm-hmm.
that kind of industry, creative,
Mm-hmm.
but like in more of a uh that kind of profession. I don't know, who
Mm-hmm.
has like a creative mind, but like a structured soul.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that might go well with you, align well with you.
Yeah,
Um,
I feel like for you, definitely someone older and more mature in their
yeah.
thinking who can appreciate like the light that you bring to his life and to the room when you enter it, you know? Like, I feel like, yeah, it sounds like the guys that you've dated, they just don't get it. Like, they don't appreciate your multidimensionality because they think, like, oh, I don't know. I don't know what they're thinking. I don't care what they're thinking. Whatever they're thinking is incorrect. But yeah, definitely someone who's like mature, who's also like, you know, able to be assertive and take the lead. So you don't have to worry about like picking up the
Yeah,
pieces because you're so used to like organizing and bringing people together. It's like you deserve someone that's going to bring you with him, you know, rather than just like have wait for you to do everything for him. So
yeah.
I'm not
I
sure
would
like
love
what
that.
profession. I mean, maybe you being like a lawyer power couple.
So I don't really go for lawyers. That is a weird thing, but
Yeah.
I'm more into my like I know I'm pretty varied in professions, but
Mm-hmm.
weirdly I hang around a lot of lawyers. That's my problem. But
Right.
anyone listening, let me know if you know anyone.
Yeah.
I'll
Do
be
you
set up.
prefer like I mean, because you have like a more like corporate job, do you go for guys that are like not working in corporate or like it's or maybe you're more like a banker, like banker finance guy? I guess you've dated like finance guys, right?
Yeah, I've definitely been on dates with finance guys. There was one person I went on dates with last year who was a neuroscientist, and I really loved that. That was
Mm,
so different, and he was really,
yeah.
really interesting.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Um,
if not lawyer power couple, maybe like doctor lawyer, but
yeah,
doctor who
but just
like
like
doesn't have to be so
science.
hands-on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just someone interesting, honestly. Just if
Yeah.
you have an interesting like worldview, you read the news, you're
Mm-hmm.
wanting to learn more about life. Like
A
I will be
curious
into.
mind. Mm.
Exactly, exactly. And you deserve that too. We all deserve that. We deserve the
Yes.
best.
Yes, we do. Thank you so much for being on the show, Sarah. Let us know what you thought of this episode. I would be so honored to have Sarah as a guest again if you guys enjoyed this, or you can send us questions together and we can answer different topics. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's been so fun.
Yay! I'm so glad we
It's
got
been,
to do
yeah,
this.
I know. This is such a good idea.
Thank you again.
Thank
Lots of
you.
love.
Mwah, mwah, mwah. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank
If you are still
you.
listening.